because I get tired of arguing with people on Twitter about Hamas and Israel, I'm just going to let Robert F. Kennedy Jr. sound off as to why it really is a one-sided affair on which side you should come down on. Here we go. It's 13 minutes. Enjoy.
First of all, Hamas itself is an extraordinarily wealthy organization that has, all of its top officials, literally all of them are billionaires. The top three people, Ismail Haniyeh and his two top cohorts. Ismail Haniyeh has $5 billion that he's stolen from, international aid. Yasser Arafat was a billionaire. His wife is a billionaire. Mahmoud Abbas, who's the current director of the West Bank, is a billionaire. His two sons have $750 million. Hamas has a war chest in real estate and stock investments of $500 million. Their biggest sponsor is Iran, who planned the attack. And Iran also, there's people in Iran who, if they had foreknowledge, could have bet on it. Do I exculpate the Israeli government for what happened? No. I think it's clear that President Netanyahu, first of all, has nurtured Hamas in many ways, the same way that we nurtured Al-Qaeda and that we nurtured ISIS. And he allowed the Qataris to give at least $1.5 billion over the past 3 years to Hamas, presumably because he thought he was buying peace. And then, he also, his very aggressive policies in the West Bank have moved a lot of the military resources to the West Bank and take them off the Gaza fence line. But there's do I blame him? I blame him for, and Likud maybe for negligence. But Hamas has to take the full blame for what happened in Israel. Hamas has been, the Israelis have treated Hamas and Gaza in a way no other nation in the world would treat an enemy that declared war on them 16 years ago and has dropped 30,000 missiles on Israel. What did Israel do? Instead of going into Gaza, which every other country could have done, just flattened it. If the Mexican government elected a communist, if Mexican people elected a communist government, they hijacked the government and they said, okay, we're reclaiming Texas, and then sent missiles onto San Antonio and Houston. How long would it take for Mexico to be flat? Not long. We would go, and then what if they sent 3,000 terrorists to slit people's throat, burn babies, rape women, and all that? We would go in there. The Israelis have done something different. They, instead of going into Gaza, they built a fence around it. Now Hamas says, oh, you put us in open air prison? Yeah, because you were sending suicide bombers across the border. We had an open border. You were sending suicide bombers over to kill us, and we had to put the fence up. And in order to stop the 30,000 missiles, they built an Iron Dome, which we helped them pay for. But when a missile's sent over, they shoot it down. Every missile that Hamas makes costs them about $800. To shoot it down costs $40,000. The Israelis have taken that and said, we're going to shoulder that burden because we don't want to go in there. And they thought it was under control. They put up the fence. The fence has cameras on it, has monitoring systems, it has automatic machine guns, and it has balloons that, look, and because Hamas was being aided by Iran, they got North Korean drones that were able to shoot down those balloons, that were able to disable the defenses, and then they used explosives and tractors to carve these holes in the fence. And Israel, up till that moment, felt like this was a tactical issue. Now, they get more, Gaza gets more money from the international aid community than any people on the face of the earth. Gaza has gotten more per capita than we gave to the Marshall Plan to rebuild all of Europe after World War II. The Israelis, when the Israelis walked out of Gaza unilaterally, said, we're giving it to you. We don't want any more disputes. They took 9,000 Jewish families who lived there in beautiful houses along the Gaza coast. They forced them to leave. It was very unpopular. They didn't want their Jewish graves to be defaced, so they dug up the Jewish graveyards and brought them out. They removed the IDF, and they said, we're going to give you a going-away present to Hamas, to Gaza. We're going to give you 3,000 greenhouses that are worth a lot of money, that make Gaza food self-sufficient. Not only that, a net food exporter. And for free, we are going to rebuild the port of Gaza, which is a beautiful port, but it's inadequate, and so that you can make it the Singapore of the West. Gaza should be an Eden, an economic Eden, with all the money that's being poured in there. But what have they done with the money, Hamas? They've hijacked their own people. They have deprived and starved their own people. They've made all of their leaders billionaires. They don't even live in Gaza. They live in Doha, and they live in Ankara in Turkey, and Doha and Qatar, in huge palaces, and surrounded by guards. They built 300 miles of tunnels. This is what they did with the money they were supposed to be building for people, poor Palestinians, who are stuck in refugee camps. Build them houses. We put plenty of concrete money. They built 300 miles of tunnels, 1,300 tunnels, and they bought weapons. They bought drones, they bought missiles, they tore up the state-of-the-art irrigation system and that the Israelis had built. You know, Gaza is an oasis. That's why it's there. It had great fresh water. They've destroyed it. They destroyed the fresh water. It's now all saltwater infiltration because they stopped regulating well drilling. They tore up the irrigation system and they cut the irrigation pipes into rockets, turned them into rockets, and fired them at Israel. 30,000 rockets before October 7th, 10,000 since. Now, one of the things they say is, oh, the Israelis are using collective punishment to starve us, right? And I have friends in Gaza, Palestinian friends. I have a lot of Palestinian friends all over Israel and the West Bank. I've met with all the Palestinian leadership in the West Bank. Israel, because Gaza mismanaged, Gaza has plenty of fresh water. They have some of the best desalination plants in the world. But they don't have any fuel for it. Why don't they have fuel? First of all, Israel, because they mismanaged their water, Israel built its own pipes out of humanitarian impulse to pump water into Gaza. It's only 9% of the water, so they're not shutting off all the water. They shut off their little 9%. Why? Because Hamas bombed the pipes. And then they wouldn't let food. Hamas, to this day, is sending hundreds of rockets every day. Why is Israel going to bring food in there and get bombed by rockets and fuel trucks? Now, Hamas says, oh, you didn't give us enough food for the hospitals. Hamas, in the tunnels, is storing 1.5 million liters of fuel. And they were starving their own population. They didn't build a single bomb shelter in all of Gaza. They said the tunnels, we don't let the population into the tunnels. Those are for our fighters, 40,000 fighters. They're the ones who get to stay in the tunnels. The population is up there, and they put their armories, their fuel dumps, their headquarters, their command headquarters under mosques, hospitals, residential housing, and schools. They use their civilians as shields. And how do we know they have all this fuel? Well, there's proof. Because those weapons, the rockets they're sending on Israel right now, 10,000 since October 7th, require huge amounts of fuel to fire them. So they were using the fuel for the rockets and not letting their public get it for the incubators in the hospital. What did Israel do? Risk the lives of IDF soldiers to go into Gaza and bring the incubators, enough fuel for those incubators. And Hamas told the hospital administrators, if you go to the corner and pick them up, because Israel left it on the corner, they didn't want to go in there, we'll shoot you. And so then Israel sent IDF soldiers to actually bring it into the hospital. Now, they say they're targeting civilians. Well, here's what Israel has done. Israel used high tech to avoid civilian casualties. It has already, it's made 20,000 phone calls with Israeli soldiers who speak Arabic before they bomb a building. If they're going to bomb a target that is a high value target, like a terrorist and a group, they don't give any warning. 90% of their targets are infrastructure, and they always warn in advance. And they've warned people to go to the south so that they can root out the terrorists. But they also go neighborhood by neighborhood and say, tomorrow we're going to bomb your neighborhood. They make phone calls to the landlords and to the individuals, but a lot of their phones don't have connectivity now. So they drop leaflets. Leaflets are color-coded by neighborhood and by time, so that you know that it was meant for you on this date. You're not picking up an old leaflet and reading it. They've made 1.2 million robocalls, sent 1.2 million leaflets. And then, before they bomb an apartment building, they send a little piece of ordnance, a little tiny missile called a roof knocker. They send it from a drone or a helicopter, and it goes and hits the top. And everybody knows that's the signal that within 1 hour or 2 hours, that building is going to be dropped. They warn them. What happens? Hamas won't let the people leave. It forced them to stay there because you know that's how it makes money, by killing its own civilians. And there's never been an army in the history of the world that has been more willing to sacrifice its mothers, its wives, its daughters, and its children to the enemy. And if you think there's not a moral difference between Hamas and Israel, consider this. What would happen if Israel decided to use human shields? Do you think Hamas would stop? Every Jew in Israel would be killed. Hamas's charter, incidentally, says it's against Islam to negotiate with Jews unless you're fooling them. Number two, Israel doesn't exist. It is our country, and we are going, and our mission is to annihilate it. Number three, we're not only going to kill every Jew in Israel, we're going to kill every Jew in the world. That's in its charter. And this is an old language. Ismail Haniyeh was on RT a week ago saying, yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're going to do this again and again and again and again. Telling Israel, you've got to negotiate. What are they going to negotiate over? Hamas considers it against a violation, a treachery to Islam, to negotiate with the Israelis. I don't see, my heart breaks for the Palestinian people. And I have a friend who's there who has 5 children, who's in South Gaza right now, and I sent him money this morning. And their lives are horrible, but I don't blame the Israelis. I'm not co-signing anything for Netanyahu or Likud, but I blame Hamas.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. You made a lot of salient points. I hope that you guys can take those to heart. If there's something that you want to retort with, feel free to leave it in the comments section. Peace.